let's go right ahead here and get started. We have a very tight schedule today because there's a lot of important things to cover. We have two caregivers here today, and we thank both of them for being here. So I'm Abby Schwartz. If I haven't had the opportunity to meet some of you yet, I'm faculty in the School of Social Work, and along with Biva Das, who you see in a little square over there, she's faculty in the Department of Kinesiology. And together we co-chair HHP's Aging Well Together initiative. We're super excited to have you here for our March virtual talk. And the goal of Aging Well Together is to advance the science and practice of gerontology through collaborative research efforts and educate and serve the ECU and Greater Greenville community. All of our events are free. If you would like more information about what we do, what we've done, please send me an email at healthyaging@ecu.edu. You could also check out our website. Biva has typed that into the chat for you. If you have questions for the caregivers as we go along, please put them into the chat because Biva and I will be manning the chat. So we will pay attention to that. And I am going to hand this over to Tamara.
So welcome everyone. I'm going to start off by saying Rosalind Carter, wife of former President Jimmy Carter, runs the Institute for Caregiving in Americus, Georgia. She says that there are 4 types of people in the world: those who have been caregivers, those who are currently caregivers, those who will be caregivers, and those who will need caregivers. Every caregiver is on their own personal journey. Today, we're going to hear from 2 caregivers who will share with us a bit of their journey. These are their stories, their paths, and their moments. While our panelists share with us, if you do have any comments or questions you'd like to ask, please type it into the chat box and we will present those at the end of the panel discussion. What I would like to do now is to introduce to you our courageous caregivers. We have with us today Mr. Mark Oliver and Ms. Beth Weinstead. So we're going to start off by getting to know our caregivers a little bit better. Can each of you, and we'll start with you, Beth, and then we'll go to Mark. Can you please share with us who you are caring for, how long you have been a caregiver, and how you became a caregiver?
Okay.
Beth, if you start us
I'm
off.
Beth Winstead. I am the caregiver for my mother. I started caregiving for her probably 6 years ago. We started this journey. She has dementia. We found this out because she started missing her hair appointment. And if you know, if 85-year-old ladies go to the hairdresser very often weekly, and when you start missing your hair appointment, that's pretty serious. So she started missing her hair appointment, and then we started seeing other things. She let somebody hack into her computer and into her bank account. Fortunately, she told a friend. I was able to call the bank, get the thing stopped. And so we started out that I was just doing her business things for her. As things started getting more and more difficult, one of the things that I ran into was my mother was still driving. And I started attending a care group, support group 2 years ago. And I think I spent more than a year trying to screw up the nerve to tell my mother she could no longer drive. If you've ever tried to take your mother's driver's license away, you know that is not easy. It used to be she would just drive around Greenville. I put a tracker on her car so I could watch where she was going. But it never failed. She would do something silly when the tracker battery was dead. And so in the fall, my mother called and said she was on her way to my house. I live out in Belvoir. She had never made it to my house successfully in several months. And so my daughter was here, and I said, Grandma's on her way out here, but we know she's not going to make it. And my daughter just felt really strongly that we had to go look for her. She just kept saying, we have to go look for her. And I said, she's going to turn around. She's not going to get here. but we did. We went out, and my daughter found my mother in Princeville, 33 east or west, leaving Greenville, passes through Belvoir and continues to Princeville. And my daughter had to literally drive in front of my mother at a stop sign to get her to stop. And she led her back to our house. That was the first of many discussions of, seriously, you have to stop driving. We've been through this for a while. I was being there not more often. The pandemic did not help with things. She has a very close friend that lived 3 houses down that would make sure she had supper every night. And they would either, Pat would either cook or my mother cooked. And when my mother cooked, it meant they went out to eat and picked up food. And that was working pretty well. She was getting significantly worse. And in January, right after a caregiver support group, I screwed the nerve up and I sat down at my mother's house and I said, you can't live by yourself anymore. The doctors told you this, it's not safe. And so we talked about it, and it was a very coherent conversation. And sometimes your conversations with dementia patients can be very coherent, and sometimes they're not. And we talked about it and decided that we would have someone come stay with her about 3 days a week for a few hours a day. And we would work towards building her a house on our property to live in. We had an appointment on Friday with the builder. Thursday of that week, my mother suffered massive pulmonary embolism. She, at the hairdressers, she was transported to Vidant. She actually did code. They did CPR, and she actually survived a very, very serious. They did not believe she would survive. And 2 months ago tomorrow, she came to live in our house. To say that my world has been turned upside downwards in 2 months would be an incredible understatement. The only reason I can do this today is her friend friend Pat has her. I cannot leave her sight at this point. Taking a shower is something that I can't do unless somebody else is here. Last night I was on a Zoom call. I was on a Zoom church conference. She did not see me. She went in her room. She started packing her suitcase. And she told me she was going home. We went through a lot. We go through this almost every day now, that she can't live alone. She does not believe she has dementia. So my excuse with her is because of the blood thinners she's on. Because you see, 3 weeks after the last that pulmonary embolism, she suffered another one. And this time they had to put her on a blood thinner. She was refusing medication before. So in the past 2 months, we have had her here, moved her in. We have a builder going to add a room for her in the back of our house. So she will have her own space. We've been through OT and PT coming to the house. She doesn't understand who they are, why they're here, or why she needs it. And next week we'll end that. She came home from the hospital in a wheelchair, unable to walk at all. She now can walk from our house out to the road, which is 900 feet and back. So she has progressed significantly physically. Mentally, she has gone hill. The dementia has increased significantly. She did not know who I was this morning. She asked me where I grew up, and when I said Ragsdale Road, she looked at me and she goes, I used to live on Ragsdale Road. So we've been through that recently. It is a journey that took a turn that I didn't expect it to take. I thought I had a few more months before we got to this point. It is very tough because she doesn't admit there's anything wrong. And she also has developed quite an interesting past history. She told the people at the hospital she used to run the hospital. She's told me that she did OT. She was an occupational therapist and a physical therapist. She used to run corporations. My mother was a librarian at Joyner Library at ECU. She was the state president of AAUP a number of years ago, and she was a parliamentarian. She could run meetings, but she'd never ran the hospital or anything else. And I'm a little concerned that there are extra student loans hiding somewhere from all these past careers that I don't know about. In fact, they were coming to do PT the other day, and they told me they were going to do advanced balance. And so to trying to get her to calm down, I told her that I thought she was going on tightrope walking. I mean, that seemed pretty advanced balance to me. And she told me she did that one time. So, it is very much a challenge. The fact that I cannot go or do anything is the biggest thing right now. And she packs her clothes up every morning.
Thank you, Beth.
She packs her clothes up.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
She does pack. She packs her things up every morning to leave. Yeah.
Oh boy. Yeah. So thank you for sharing all that. I know that was can be very difficult. And I can tell your heart is in it. What we're going to do now is ask Mark to do the same and tell us about how he became, let me start at the beginning so I get it right. Tell us, please, who you're caring for, Mark, how long you've been a caregiver, and how you became a caregiver.
All right. Again, can everybody hear me okay? Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
All right. Again, sorry about the video here. So I've got my laptop on the dock station. I've got 2 external monitors, and one thinking about a camera not being up here. This is goes back about February 2 years ago. Dr. Lane was my mother's psychiatric doctor. My mother's dealt with anxiety for years, and she's took anxiety meds and saw Dr. Lane, Michael Lane, on a regular basis. He's my boy. I mean, I've been to see him enough now. He's like part of the family. But back in February 2 years ago, he asked my mother to bring in her kids to her next meeting, and he told me that and so me and my 2 siblings, got a brother and sister, live out of town. We all met with Dr. Lane with my mother, and he told us that he felt like she was early stages of dementia. We need to start preparing for what we're going to do. Stuff like she didn't need to be cooking, having the oven on. He was worried about her driving. It was progression. At the time, he felt like she was okay. So where she was at, she's living in an apartment, and the lease was up in June, I think June or July. So we started working on that. My wife and I would go by daily. My wife is awesome. Without her, none of this works. But we would go by daily, monitor her meds, make sure she was eating right. I put a lock on the breaker for her stove until we could get her out. She actually, her car, she had a wreck, and the car was totaled. She was fine, and that was kind of maybe it might have something to do with it too. Not sure. So taking her, her driving away was a bit easier than you, Miss Beth, just because of it's like, but she didn't have a vehicle. So she hasn't driven since February. Can y'all still hear me? Y'all still?
Yes, we can.
Okay, all right. Had my screen did something funny, so. But anyway, so it was July 2 years ago. She moved in with us. And it's had its ups and downs. Again, without my wife, I go to work every day, and at the time we were evaluating nursing care facilities. She's evaluated by Dr. Lane. She's evaluated by a facility we selected in my hometown, Vernon Rapids. And financially, this is where creative living has just been a blessing with us. Financially, she qualifies for a skilled nursing facility, but she doesn't qualify for assistance. So it would be like $4,000 to $5,000 a month it would cost us out of pocket for her to go for assisted living. skilled nurse facility, she qualified for insurance and supplements to pretty much pay for everything. So the money's just not there, but she needs the care. So we moved her in with us, and it's got its peaks and it's got its valleys. The biggest thing with my mother, Miss Beth, she hasn't progressed the way your mother has, but with her, it's having to explain things over and over and over again. Where your mother, she packs her bags every day. My mother, she has to have 30-minute conversations about her meds. Her hobby is her meds. She reads them. If it has a side effect for a med, she's gonna have it. She tries to spread her medications out like every 2-3 hours throughout the day. She make you think that they're life or death, but mostly it's blood pressure medicine and anxiety medication, stuff that she needs. But if you were off a little bit, then with the timing of it, she'd be fine. But for her, she's got to take it. I mean, only an hour, right punctual on this. She's got to take it at for 12 o'clock meds, got to be 12 o'clock. For 3 o'clock meds, got to be 3 o'clock. So, but creative living has been great in that too. Miss Betsy over there has worked with her, and Miss Betsy was really well also. My mother, she's I'm singing praises for the folks over there. It's my mother. Remember, she goes to her doctor's appointments. Using her blood pressure's up a little bit because she's just a little anxious. And Miss Betsy, she said every time I take her blood pressure, she said it always seems high. I ran that by her doctor. Well, let me check on that. Run it by her doctor and everything. And next visit with Dr. Lane was about a week later. He says she's absolutely right. He says for the past year, every time she comes in here, she's just slightly high. So they bumped her meds up. But with that being said, I mean, where we're at is, especially going into, we were seriously looking at skilled nursing facility for my mother. If I had my way, I'd be with her every day of my life. But life is in the way. I've got a 16-year-old son and a 22-year-old daughter. Me and my wife work 50-hour weeks, and it's just hard to care for her. But with COVID kicking in, my mother, she's about it. Not my mother, my wife, she's about an employee. So with COVID kicking in, she works from home now. So she's able to be there for my mother during the day. And again, like I said earlier, without her, none of this works. My son is great with her as well. He does school from home. But during the day, I mean, it's a challenge for them. I try to get my wife out as much as possible to get her away. And then my son does well with when we're not there. So just try to do trade-offs to where we all have time to relax and say a little bit here and there, because she is very demanding. But with that being said, I mean, going back to creative living is very affordable. It gets her out of the house, it gets her stimulated, and it gets us, my wife time during the day that she can do things, because my wife, she does a lot of this kind of stuff. And, my mother has walked in like the middle of meetings and stuff that she is actually running. It makes it really awkward when she's got to pause the meeting or come back to the meeting and stuff. So, but anyway, so we try to stay on a regular schedule with creative living. She hasn't been in about a couple of weeks. We've got her. They had a couple people there that caught COVID. They've got it absolutely under control, but just me being extremely careful, I decided to keep her out. And she never has taken a flu shot. But I recently went and got my COVID first shot myself. I came home and she's my mother just don't like shots at all. She's adamant about not getting the COVID shot. I came home with a pretty orange bag where I bought a shirt and it was in it. She wanted one of those bags. So the next day she went. So yesterday or the day before she got her shot. I was all about the bag. She's 78 years and she doesn't take shots unless she's forced to. So, but that's our journey. I mean, and where we're at now is just, I feel like if we're kind of getting to the extremity of what we can do for her and give her the care that she needs. So, I am looking at skilled nursing facilities again, right? But the COVID, I mean, I want to make sure we got a period in the sentence on this stuff before we start exploring that. I really hadn't talked to anybody since beginning of COVID about her going anywhere. mostly because I mean they want to accept me, folks. But I want to make sure that there's a safe environment. We got this thing under control, and we'll do whatever we have to. So, but in this, man, I got invited through Creative Living, and like I say, they've been an absolute blessing on us. I mean, it's very affordable. It's flexible schedules where we can take her in the morning, we can take her at lunch. You know, it's just and the hours of operation work really well with her jobs. So, but yeah, I mean, that's pretty much our story. You know, kind of comical with my mother when Dr. Lane called us in. He told her that she was pre-stage of dementia. I said, are you sure? She's always been loopy. A little story with this back, you know, probably, I don't know, maybe signs from early signs. I don't know. But I mean, this goes back to my mother's teenage years, according to my father. But when our son was born, we had a baby shower at our church, and my mother was there. And she hadn't long moved. She moved to Greenville to help us with her son, kind of help with daycare with her during the day with my wife and I worked. And I would, you know, pretty much paid her the way we would a daycare. We allowed her to kind of retire early. But she was irritated. She said, I finally figured it out. I always burn my cakes. Every time I cook here in Greenville, I always burn my cakes, but I finally figured it out. So what's that, Mom? She said, I was using the wrong instructions on the cake mix. What do you mean the wrong instructions? She said, well, there's a high altitude. She says, it's a high altitude instruction. She said, I live on the second floor here. I used to live on the first floor. And my preacher, literally tears just squirted out of his eyes when she said that. So when Dr. Lane told us that he felt like she was pre-stage dementia, it was kind of like I had to question him a little bit on. So, but anyway, I think I covered it pretty well. I'm not sure if I got long-winded. I apologize. So
You did great. Thank you. So we're going to move to the next question. And I would like to ask you, I just want to say thank you for helping us to get to know you and your loved one better. So now what we want to do is talk about a little bit of the hard stuff, and not that any of it's easy, but what I would like to say is that we all know that there can be challenges, and y'all definitely illustrated some very good ones for us. So what we'd like for you to share right now with us, and again, we'll start with you, Beth. What has been your greatest challenge with caregiving overall? If you could just briefly tell us what's been the absolute greatest challenge, or where you've met the greatest resistance.
I think that for me, the greatest challenge is that I have become the security blanket. The fact that I can't go anywhere. My daughter is very, very good with my mother, but my daughter moved to Florida 2 weeks before my mother went in the hospital. She had lost her job. She had been kind of floundering here. And so she chose to move to Florida. She talked to me about it a long time. And I told her she could not stop living her life because of her grandmother. So that, that has meant I don't have her here. My husband is here. He works. I actually retired about 9 years ago. I worked part-time, and I actually had to quit when my mother was hospitalized. So we're in a better shape resource-wise than most people, and that is very helpful. But the fact that I can't do anything, I have an office. I'm a webmaster for a state organization. I can't go in a room with that and she not be able to see me. Even if my husband's here, she will get up and walk out and then try to leave. We have actually installed now security cameras because she's walked out our back door the other day, and it's okay for her to go to walk, but we live on a really busy road, and we have surrounded by creeks and things. I don't think she's going to go out to the chicken house and collect chicken eggs. I'm not worried about that, but I do worry about her getting to the road and wandering. So we've installed security cameras this week at our house. But I think the biggest thing is the fact that I actually do have somebody coming in once a week now. Her former housekeeper is coming in on Wednesday mornings from 9 to 1. That's the first time I've been able to find anybody that she will let stay with her and let me leave. They take care of her room when she's here. They change her sheets. They Although yesterday my mother cleaned my kitchen island and then proceeded to tell me that I needed to get all my junk off her kitchen island. So the fact that I thought I would be able to, when my husband's here, he took off yesterday and tomorrow so he could give me a break, except for that he can't give me a break because she won't let me out of her sight. So tomorrow he's planning to take her to the nurseries to look at plants. But I could not drive. I can't even go to the grocery store to pick up the groceries I've ordered by myself now. She immediately gets in the car if I go anywhere. That's a piece I didn't expect at all. I'm not sure where we're going to go from here at this point. My husband has felt really strongly that she stay with us. And we are, like I think I said, we're building a room for her. And I foresee at some point we will have to have somebody else here. But at this point, she knows, she's lucid enough to know that she's being cared for in a lot of cases. And so I can't do that right now. That for me has been probably the hardest part, is that I don't get much sleep anymore. I like to sit up when everybody else goes to bed at night for at least an hour. And so sometimes I'm going to bed at 1 and she's going to be up at 7 o'clock. And I'm used to eating my breakfast and sometimes taking a short nap in my chair. I can't close my eyes or she's talking to me. So I think for me, that's been the biggest surprise, is that there is absolutely no way for me to get time away.
Thank you so much, Beth. That was very, I love all your examples of the different ways that it is challenging. Mark, can you share with us what has been your greatest challenge, or where you've met the greatest resistance while caring?
Yeah, and like Miss Beth, I mean, it's she's got to have somebody there all the time. If we never leave her there by herself. Going into this, I have 2 siblings, and I was trying to work out a system with them that, hey, once a month or once every other month, let her come stay with y'all, and and that just to get her away, get her time with their other kids. Also, just help with their help and evaluation and the hard decisions, like Ms. Beth is facing. Is what is best for what are we doing the right thing and that kind of stuff. But that's really fell through the cracks. I mean, I'm not going to throw family issues into this, but my wife and I were kind of lone rangers in this. So we haven't taken vacations in 2 years. My sister has a couple times, 3 or 4 times, I reckon, in the past 2 years. She's kept her for a weekend where my wife and I could get away for a little bit. It sounds horrible when you talk about this stuff, trying to get away from your mother, but you got to. I mean, because it's just so demanding. Daily though, it's my wife. I mean, again, I can't say it enough. She makes this work. She is patient. She loves me. She loves my mother, and without her, it doesn't work, because she's able to be there with her during the day. Same thing with my son. So so for me personally, it's trying to balance it and make it all work on a daily basis. It's the mornings, time with her may take 15 minutes. It may take an hour, depending on what's going on with her that day. Hours an extreme, but yeah, it means I've got to talk about her medicines, because basically her meds, it means it's the way she wants to do them. She can take some meds in the morning and take them at night, but she thinks she's got side effects, and in her mind, they don't get along with each other. I remember her making hand gestures, wait. It's just like if she's got to space them out, and so she makes it complicated. And basically, I give her these peel packs every day. I have to keep these things loaded. They're just color coordinated. It's the screw-on caps. It's clear, it's blue, it's green, and I have an Excel spreadsheet that tells her what times and how to do it. And at 10 o'clock, you take everything in the blue. At 12 o'clock, you take everything in the green. And every day I've got to talk to her about it. It's very elementary, and she's been doing this we've been doing this with her for about 4 years now, really. So it's nothing new, but she has trouble with that on a daily basis, and I got to go through it with her every day. And to me, is this somewhere? I mean, I talk to folks. They you say crossword puzzles, exercise the brain, do things. To me, that's just kind of like a daily exercise for her to make sure that she's doing her stuff right. And she likes putting checks in boxes. It's like, it's an accomplishment for her. Like, hey, I met my 12 o'clock, my 12 o'clock appointment with my heels. I started getting her to sign her name at the bottom too, just making sure that she can still do that as well. I don't know. I reckon it's just the daily challenges that come with it, and trying to make sure that I have balance. My wife for a while, she was front line COVID on the phone dealing with COVID patients, and saying just people that I think she can't talk to about it all, but sometimes we just feel that if she get off this hotline, she'd be in a very bad place. And she, like I say, because of what she is and the confidentiality, she can't tell me much. She just can't tell me she's had a bad day. It's guilt to a degree, because I don't. There's nothing I can do. It's appreciation, and I mean, our bond is probably strongest husband and wife one it's ever been from this as well. But I reckon this is personally for me, that's the daily challenge that I pin on my wife so much. And then just the chaos of the day and trying to keep it all together. And then just there's just no break from it. It's just creative living is our break. To get away and just kind of say off for a little bit.
Okay, thank you both so much for sharing that with us. So we know it's not all bad, and in the interest of going into a higher note or a more positive direction, let's talk a little bit about the upside of caregiving. So Beth, I would like to ask you, when things seem so overwhelming, have you been able to find some joy in your caregiving journey, or some aspect of caregiving that has brought you the greatest joy?
One of the things that I learned, well, I knew, but my mother loves to travel. And a couple of years ago, my husband and I decided that we were going to take advantage of that with her at this point. And we went to New York City in November a couple of years ago. We stayed in, and you learn you have to adjust. The commuting from this furthest difference isn't going to work. You gotta be fair to yourself. We went to New York City, we saw plays, we did things like that. She loved it. It gave her something to talk about. Last year, we went to Vermont. Her sister lives in Vermont or upstate New York, take a pick on what day it is. And we went to Woodstock, Vermont, and we didn't ski. My mother actually cross country skis. We didn't ski, but we went up there and we ate in great restaurants and visited and all that, except for that we flew back at the very beginning of COVID. And so I think the fact that none of us can do that right now has made it more difficult. But I've learned to take her on rides, and I might get some really weird stories, but the fact that we can go out and go to ride and hear things from her side. She grew up in Hyde County in World War II, which is a pretty unique perspective when they used to watch for submarines. And so I'm listening to what she tells me about those kinds of things. She really enjoys being around my granddaughters, and we try to go visit with them and go watch soccer games and things like that. They live in the Cary area. But I think COVID has probably covered, like everybody else, colored that this year. But I did try to do those things early on. I wish I had done them sooner. We watch a lot of TV, but I try to stay away from the politics stuff with her because she gets wound up. But it is more time that we get to spend together. And the running joke is that I kill the plants at my house all the time. I do not have the plant gene. My husband does, and my mother does. And so I have assigned her to take care of the plants on the front porch that I buy just to bring home and die. So that's one of the things that she's really looking forward to, is working out in the yard. That's being retired also means that I have the time to do those things. It's also, you have to have
That's
a sense of
fabulous.
humor.
Tell us a little bit more about that, Miss Beth.
Well, everybody told me that people with dementia like to fold things. So I was never Susie Homemaker, not a strong suit of mine at all. But yesterday, when she and Dorothy changed the sheets on her bed, I washed the sheets and put them back on. Then I don't have to fold them. So the sheets had to be folded. And I thought, this is great. I hate folding sheets, but this will give her something to do today. So I said, Mom, could you help me? I really need these sheets folded, and I'm really bad at it. And I put them on her bed, and she says, well, now stand right here. And she hands me a pillowcase, and she gets a pillowcase, and she shows me how to fold the pillowcase. And then we get to the top sheet, and she hands me 2 corners. And then she tells me that it's disgraceful that the sheets are wrinkled. And I told her that I did not iron. I'm known for, if I iron, we have snow, so I don't iron. So it got back on me this morning. I learned to fold sheets this morning instead of having somebody else folding sheets for me.
That is a lovely story. Thank you for sharing that with us. All right, Mr. Moore, it's your turn to tell us the best thing. So what we want to know is that even when things seem so overwhelming, have you been able to find some joy in your caregiving journey, and what aspect of caregiving has brought you the most joy?
The memories. Just when I have time to reflect and get away from it, I feel like that the bad times be forgotten, and the funny times will be remembered. I recently had a birthday, and my mother, she came into my room and handed me a card, said, "Here, it finally dried." I don't know what that meant. So that's kind of the but it was, I reckon she had put it up under the water spigot to seal it or something. I don't know, but just that kind of stuff. She my mother and father divorced when I was 9 years old. So my father's been out of the picture for a long time, but I have vivid memories of them together as a kid. And even after their divorce, just with the Oliver side of the family, all the uncles picked guitars, and I got cousins and aunts that sing like angels. And family get-togethers all involved in music. And my mother was very involved with that too growing up. They were married for 20 plus years. So I mean, she was very involved with the family. So a lot of the family get-togethers and the songs they sing and stuff was there. But I've since COVID, I've kind of picked up the habit of guitars. Released, my wife plays too, so that's been a release. But the memories I'll get with her, and without a book, my mother will start singing these old Hank Williams songs and Hank Snow and Patsy Cline stuff, and it's just fun. I didn't do that as a kid, play the guitar. I was trying to be a heavy metal guy when I was a 16-year-old. My dad was playing Hank stuff, so it just didn't go very well. But as of COVID, I just kind of really taken an interest in it, and it's just been fun. Those memories. My wife, my mother, she gets dizzy. I'm not sure if you've been here, Miss Beth, but I mean, my mother, she can, she bathes herself, but when she closes her eyes to do her hair, she says she gets dizzy. So, my wife washes her hair for her almost daily. And I think that's gonna be a fond memory for my wife, those moments. My wife lost her mother, was killed by a drunk driver back in 2002. So I think that's part of what goes with my wife, is that she really appreciates that mother relationship. So I think that kind of fills that void for her too. And the fact that we can bring her in, even though it's a stretch, I mean, we can do something that other people can't. I've got my mother in my home with me. And where that in a lot of cases she wouldn't be. It'd be like we visit her and just see her health and her mental capacity diminish. You know, we get to see her every day. I get to have a conversation. I get to watch a TV show with her. I get to poke fun at her. I feel like there's a lot of time in her blood because sometimes, I mean, we're at each other. I got to remind myself I got to be the adult. I'm dealing with the 8-year-old, you know, or as Dr. Lane tells us, you kind of regresses a little bit, you know. But I just feel like that, you know, the there's a whole lot of stress. But I feel like, you know, down the road, and hopefully it's many, many years away, when I reflect on all this, I got the fond memories, the comical stuff, the high altitude bacon instructions. Those are the memories that stay with us. So anyway,
That's lovely. So, I'm sorry, sir.
and I see it. I see it.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that. And I'm going to say now that we have heard a little bit of good, a little bit of bad, a little bit of ugly. And so we're going to ask both Beth and Mark to share with us now the one piece of advice or what you would consider the most important insight that you could share with the participants of this panel discussion today. Just what is the one thing you would like for all of us to take away from what you've learned, good, bad, or otherwise, on your caregiving journey? We'll start with you, Beth.
Okay. I would say to make sure you have a good support system. I'm an only child. There isn't anybody else to blame for anything. It makes it easier in a way, but it does make it harder. Find a good support group. You might not think it's necessary, but you realize you're not alone. And they don't mind if you talk about that you're afraid to take their car keys away for the 12th month in a row, maybe. But not just a support group. My family, my kids are very supportive of me. But the other thing that has helped me the most is my absolute dearest friend in the world's mother had a stroke last June, and she's taking care of her mother in her home. And she and I can say anything to each other, always by text, because my husband and I communicate solely almost by text these days. I can say anything to her, no matter how bad the day has been or how good the day has been. And she's going to be supportive of me, and I'm going to be supportive of her. There's no manual for a dementia patient. None of us know what we're doing. It changes every day with every person. And you have to remind yourself that you're doing the absolute best you can. You're doing your best with what you have at this moment. And I can say that some days, and then the next day I'll think I'm the biggest failure in the world. And my friend will say that back to me. So I think that you have to have a lot of support. And in this case, if y'all can't hear them barking dogs in the background, but having a lot of support, having the people in your family, but also having somebody that you can absolutely let your gut out to when you have to.
Thank you, Beth. I love your advice. And now, Mark, we'd love to hear from you. What would you consider the absolute last, most important piece, or as many actually as you'd like? We want to hear your advice, your insight, of things that you would like for the participants of this panel discussion to take away today.
Will do. Well, just like Ms. Beth led in with the support system. That you got to have that. Going into it, I just kind of made a few notes here. You got to commit, and you got to prepare. Dr. Lane was very good with us and explaining to what we're up against, and just make sure that you're ready for this, because you're not going to be ready for it. But I mean, stuff like I've got two dogs that we would let out on a 20-foot leash. I mean, my bigger dog, smaller dog would stay in the yard. We put a fence up in the backyard. So my mother worried about her tripping over cords and that kind of stuff. It's kind of like preparing for when you have your first baby. They have, just, I mean, you got to think about things you don't have locking the cabinets with kids and the stove, making sure and monitoring, the stuff that she does. You can't use the stove. And, we hadn't had to do anything like lock out the boxes or anything on that. I'm kind of going off on a tangent here. I would just say the preparation, commitment and preparation and patience. Sometimes my mother, she's that 5-6-year-old with temper tantrum. And it's so hard to not get in the weeds and start throwing darts back and forth at each other. But it's, I mean that as we don't throw darts. Where you're arguing and whatnot. You got to be the bigger person. You got to be the adult. I mean, and calm the situation down and have patience. And my wife is a whole lot better than that than what I am. But just patience. Made a note here. Do not take your support group for granted. I can't tell my wife enough every day how much I love her. Same thing with my son. You got to have somewhere to vent. With me, I take guitar lessons now. It's been a COVID thing and a mama thing. So it's my thing to get away from it for a little bit. My guitar instructor, wonderful guy. He's like a brother to me. I'll spend about 15, 20 minutes again the guitar lesson. How's your mom doing? Yeah. So, and my wife is her father. She's very close with her father, and it's just somebody you can go to. And we try to make sure our door is absolutely open to our son, that he can come to us and hey, and son, you got to pry it out of because we don't know. Sometimes he's taking classes online, and my mother's coming into his room 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 times a day. So we got to be able to, like I say, it's like you got to do to my mother. You can't do that. He feels like he's getting his mother and his Grammy in trouble or something. So, but anyway, so support group, communication, preparation. Have a place to vent. And find a way. I mean, this Beth, your mother, and just she can't take her eyeballs off of you. I think you're like 2-3 months into it. We're 2 years. It's very important that you get away. Because it just wears on me. I mean, I have trouble sleeping at night sometimes, and after a while, it's just got to be some way to make that happen. It's a wonderful thing that the things that your husband's trying to do to get you some time so that you can get away too. So I don't know. I kind of rambled on that a little bit, but it's hard to say. Here's the one thing, but I would say support system, patience, and preparation.
That's awesome. I want to remind everybody that if you have any comments or questions that you'd like to ask Mark or Beth tonight, please go ahead and type it into the chat. There's plenty of time for chat tonight, and after the chat, we will have some resource information for you, but we will go. First of all, before we go, let me just say to Beth and Mark, thank you so very much for sharing all of this wonderful stuff about your caregiver journey. I'm betting my last dollar that there are plenty of caregivers on the Zoom meeting right now that are relating to you in a number of ways. And we'll probably hear a little bit more during the comments. So please, if you have a comment, enter those comments or questions into the chat box. And at this point, we're going to go ahead and turn it over to Miss Mary Hall, who is going to monitor the questions and comments from the chat box to keep the discussion going with the caregivers. So Mary, take it away.
Abby, did you want me to do that, or did you want to do that?
Oh, no, you can do it if you want. I was just going to copy and paste them in there for you because there's a lot of scrolling.
Great. Okay. So one of the questions that was asked for the caregivers to answer is, what do you think about using music or mindfulness exercises for both you and your care recipient? Do you guys ever use music or have any kind of mindfulness, kind of calming moments during the day?
Well, unlike Mark, nobody at my house is very musical, but one of the things I learned my mother was sundowning really, really bad. And I switched her, I switched her coffee to decaf without telling her. But the other thing is that I use my phone, and when I think things are getting a little heavy, I turn classical music on the Alexa. And so it calms her down, also just kind of sets the mood in the house. So that's one way that we use music here, is that I put it on in the background. My husband told me one day I was driving him crazy with all the classical music, but he was joking. And so that's one of the things I do. The mindfulness is interesting because for a number of years I actually led a yoga class in my church. It was a book we had that was a guide to Christian yoga, and my mother was actually and participated. And my aunt mentioned that to me recently, and that's one thing I want to do is try to find that video. I mean that CD again. It was actually a really good CD that talks you all the way through the exercises, and it had the chair version of it. And so I think that's one thing that I'm going to try. Also, filling the day can be long sometimes, and so that would be a good way to do it with using the yoga mindfulness too.
And you know that yoga is great for balance, Beth. So that would be a good suggestion for your mom, and it's a lot more fun.
Yeah, since she won't tightrope walk. I mean, you know.
Okay, we have another. Mark, did you want to comment? I know you guys are using music with your mom, but tell me how it makes you feel, makes your mom feel when you use music.
Yeah, that just brought back another good little memory here. I mean, my wife, when she cleans, is the jerk around the house is that she cuts the radio on and cuts it on loud. And my son and I look at each other and say run, because that means that the honeydew list is going to be long and distinguished on what we got to do that day. Well, we're in one of those times one day, and I took I'm talking about heavy metal and all kinds of crazy music. I mean, it's old Beastie Boys CD that I picked up at a convenience store. I put it in, and my mother starts dancing to it. She's having a bad day. Next thing she's getting up and she's dancing, the music, yes. If it got Patsy Cline albums and stuff, yes. I'll confess that it does help. Again, there's another exercise Dr. Lane was telling us, memory with the music, remembering the words. Can she remember that stuff? And it just takes her to a happy place. And then you just start talking about something in her childhood, maybe when she heard the song for the first time and that kind of stuff. So yeah.
That's so true. The memories start flooding in sometimes with certain pieces of music. So you can use that very well. There was a comment in the chat that 2 of our attendees today are actually conducting music-based wellness workshops for caregivers. And tonight actually is the last class for that at 6 p.m. So scroll up through your chat box and you can find the link to join them after our session today. You can just jump right on theirs. So another person asked you guys as caregivers and anybody else who wants to comment in the chat about it, how do you feel like your faith may impact your caregiving duties, roles? How does your faith affect being a caregiver?
Well, I think that it really increases your prayer. I spend a lot of time at night when nobody else is around, but it also gives me a community that supports me. My mother and I actually belong to the same church. And so, that actually in one way has been kind of awkward. Earlier the fall, I joined a women's group, the Zoom women's group, and I could be myself. And then somebody invited my mother to join before she was living with me. And that kind of put a damper on it for me. So I think if that is something that faith communities need to be aware of when you have multi-generational a thing. We do watch church together as a rule if we're not going to a soccer game. one of the things I'm running into right now is I'm the preschool director at our church. And when we go back, my mother thinks she needs to help me. And that's not really realistic. So we're going to have to figure out how we're going to, we will go back to services in May, how that's going to manage. But I think you do have to spend a lot more time talking to God and asking for patience and grace. It takes a lot more than you think about.
That's a good point, Beth. Somebody commented in the chat that you do have to give yourself some grace. Like you had mentioned earlier, you're doing the very best that you can with what you have. And so giving yourself a pass sometimes when things don't go right is very, very helpful for you as the caregiver. You know, we're here to talk about not only what you're doing for your loved one, but what are you doing for yourself? So that's really important that we share that. Mark, anything else from you about your faith and how it helps you, or?
Yeah, I mean, yes. I mean, prayer gives you hope. It's that, you know, faith brings out the good in you. So I mean, it gives you a good core of where you start at. I can't imagine doing this without them. Yeah, kind of rough it is the church with the COVID. You know, my wife and I gotten away from being church every Sunday, you know, before all this started. So I mean, so I reckon our faith was kind of challenged at the time. But our church is wonderful people. My preachers probably still to the, I mean, we don't attend church the way we did at one time, and through COVID, we attend church at home, doing the online thing. My wife gets, like I said, I'm technology challenged. She gets the TV to do the things where we can watch it on TV, and we try to do it as a family on Sundays. But you know, that's a lot of folks there that can help. They want to help you, but the COVID makes it challenging, because people can't get actually hands-on involved with it. So that's kind of makes things interesting. But yeah, power of prayer is a wonderful thing. You know, it gives you a place, and and talking about venting, I apologize if I mentioned that's another place for you to vent, and you know, and put on the Lord and listen to what He tells you. Sometimes He's there for you. Sometimes He tells you that you know you need to man up, and be a better person. But I reckon it's you know, yeah, that's absolutely an outlet. And a lot of good people in our church, in a different situation. I would have people, you know, we have it, people volunteering, but with COVID, you just got to be, it puts a different little element into it. So.
Yeah, I think another piece about your faith is just how you enjoy the things that God has created. You know, maybe nature is a soothing thing for you, that's a good place to go and reflect and be one with the world, so to speak. So that's another way you can do that with your faith. We did have somebody comment that they are also an only child like you are, Beth. I don't know, Mark, did you explain if you have siblings? I didn't catch that.
Yes, ma'am. I have an older brother and sister, but they're kind of out of the picture. I mean, I went to a family doctor. There is stress there because they pretty much said that it's on us.
Right. So you feel like an only child, even if you're not literally an only child. And that does make a huge difference for people that have large families or have lots of, like you say, those support people that they can call on to take care of your loved one when you're not able to. That's a huge help. But when you're an only child, it's a totally different ball game. And I just wanted to add here that it's also a different ball game for those of you on the call. You know, caring for your parent is very different than caring for your spouse or caring for a different family member. There's different dynamics there that come into play as well. So I know it's a challenge in every situation, and everybody has to deal with it in their own special way. Several people asked about Creative Living Center, and I'm happy to tell that now, or we can save that for when we get to the resources part. But that is a great program that's out there for folks who are trying to find some time away from their loved ones. So I'll wait to see what Amanda has to share. If we include Creative Living in that, we can at the end. Yeah, anybody else have questions or issues that you're
I just
trying
want
to
to mention, I wanted to mention one thing. In a way was very fortunate because my mother and I went through a very similar situation with my father's sister a number of years ago. And so when we settled things down, we went and actually did power of attorney, healthcare power of attorneys, wills, and advance directives. And those were already in place. And I think if you have a parent or a family member that's heading in that direction, that has been a lifesaver for me. Because I found out that my mother was lying about going to the doctor. She actually, I had told her she had cancer at one point. The oncologist, I called her physician and said, there's a problem. And my mother told me that she went and told them that obviously they were mistaken. What she actually did was walk out of their office, refusing to speak to them, and she returned the mail to them as addressee unknown. So I was not aware she was not seeing a physician. Once I had the healthcare power of attorney, I was able to get a lot more help. When she let somebody hack into her bank account, she put me on that bank account immediately. But I put the power of attorney on file at the other bank. And so recently I was able to go and get that bank account address, and I could get electronic access because I couldn't see the drafts that were coming through. She had advanced directives on file at Vidant. When she went in that day, and she coded, her advanced directives were not correct on the records, and they didn't see them. I believe now that was a good thing. I think I would have always worried, what if I hadn't done something different? But they cracked her ribs, and the doctors in the emergency room told me she could not survive another round of CPR. And I told them at the time, I said, she has advanced directives. And they were able to go back and fix her records. And now we know that actually recovering from the ribs was one of the hardest parts she had of recovery. So yes, I think that if we had not had the paperwork on file, because my mother will not acknowledge there's anything wrong, I would have been fighting an incredible uphill battle that I haven't had to fight. And that was just from a really bad experience with a family member that made her go through that in advance. So I would really encourage, I mean, I have mine already too. When we did her paperwork, I did mine. And my kids know what my things are, and my husband knows. But I would say if you see your family going in that direction, get that stuff in place as fast as possible, because it may be like with me, and all of a sudden it goes, I mean, so bad, so fast. I don't know what I would have done without those.
Well, I know that Vicki Daughtry is on our call, and Mary Lou Infinito was on our call earlier, and they are part of the advanced care planning team at Vidant. And they are, I'm sure, screaming loudly and clapping that you've gotten your documents in place. But yeah, Abby added that, really at any age, it's not just wait until your parents get old to get the advanced care planning documents in place, but it's something to think about way ahead of that, so you have it for your family, so that it's something they don't have to worry about. So yeah, Vicki put in the chat the website to check out more information about that is vidanthealth.com/advanced care. So it's in the chat. You can find that, and lots of great resources, and they have opportunities all throughout the year for you to fill out your documents. So thank you for sharing that, Beth. That really helped you in this situation. You didn't expect her to have dementia or to be able to not be able to handle her affairs, and now you have to step in and help, and to have those documents prepared ahead of time so that you were able to get access to that. That's great. Any other questions? I haven't seen anything else come across. Really appreciate you guys.
Okay.
So many people have said thank you, thank you, thank you to these caregivers for sharing their story. It has been really interesting to hear your side of what's been going on with you.
Yes, that's, I would like to just reiterate what Mary said. And I want to say it now to Beth and Mark from me. I know I'm just the moderator, but I work with caregivers. And I just want to tell both of you, thank you so much for sharing all that you shared with both the caregivers and the professionals that are on this Zoom meeting or on the Zoom call today. It can be very, very hard, especially if you don't have experience with the support group where everybody does share kind of on a regular basis the way you shared today. So thank you again from the bottom of my caregiver resource specialist heart. It gives me great pleasure right now to introduce to you Miss Amanda Biggs. She is the Project Care family consultant, and I know she's going to tell you a lot about Project Care along with other resources, because guess what? Caregivers don't have to do this alone. There are lots of resources that are available for caregivers in our region, and Amanda Biggs is now going to do that for us. She's going to share a bunch of resources with us. Thank you, Amanda.
You are welcome. Thank you, Tamara. And I'm going to turn my camera off because my quality is very bad. Okay. So I want to thank Beth and Mark for sharing their caregiving journey as well. It's not easy. And as Beth mentioned, you do need a great support team to help you get through this, be it immediate family or a good friend or your church group or anyone in the community. You really need a great support team around you. But I do want to talk about some resources about taking care of you. There are numerous resources available to help you and your care recipient feel supported and alleviate caregiver burden. You guys have mentioned a whole lot of these already, so I'm just going to reiterate just a few of them. I would suggest speaking with an elder law attorney, talking about the power of attorney papers and getting those filed. If, before dementia sets in, if dementia sets in, then go ahead and talk about guardianship, advanced directives. Someone said earlier in the chat, starting at the age of 18, you do not have to be an older or senior person to start an advanced directives. Over the age of 18, anyone can get one drawn up. And I really do suggest that we go ahead and have that conversation with our family members, ask them what would they like for their end of life to look like, just get some idea of, carrying their wishes out. Also, respite, here with the Mideast Commission Area Agency on Aging team, the Project Care, Family Consultant, and the, Tamara, what is your title? FCSP? Caregiver Support Specialist.
I am, I'm the Family Caregiver Resource Specialist, and I administer the Family Caregiver Support Program.
Yes, absolutely. These services are available through our organization, and we can help provide the respite funding for family caregivers who need that break. Also, there's a Council on Aging. We talked about day programs with the Council on the Silver Care and Creative Living Centers. Those are day programs as well that can help family caregivers get a little bit of a break. And also the hospice team, depending on, your loved one's condition and their diagnosis, hospice is a great support as well. Long-term care services, Department of Social Services, talk about Medicaid and other resources that might be out there. Veteran services, speak with your local VA, for veterans that you're taking care of as well. Also, the disability advocacy services as well. They have great resources in their office, as well as supplies if needed. I do encourage our family caregivers to get into caregiver conferences, listen in on education and trainings, learn more about what it is that you're going through as a caregiver and others as well. Just getting advice from others and just hearing, like someone said earlier, knowing that you are not alone, attending a support group, just hearing what other family members have to say. I know there are quite a few that are virtual now. I have one for Pitt County that is telephonic, and I know Tamara has some that are telephonic and virtual. So just tap into some of those groups. Mary and Malcolm have support groups, and we have that support system out there for you guys. And then, if things are really challenging at home and you're thinking about placement, I suggest you do your homework, call the homes out there. There's adult care homes, there's skilled nursing facilities, assisted living and group homes. I would just do my homework, go out there and see what's out there, get as much information as possible, and see what that is all about. See what the cost is for those programs, those communities, and see if that'll fit with you and your family for your loved one. But yeah, there are great resources out there. Please do not feel like you are alone and has to go through this by yourself. We would love to help guide you in the right direction of what type of resource that you may need. Okay, any questions? All right, that's it.
Thank you so much, Amanda. I am going to, if anybody wants my phone number, I will, I'm going to give it to you now because I tried typing it in and I just kept hitting all the wrong keys. So I would just like to say my phone number is 252-974-1837. And my email address is TJO, V as in Victor, EL @mideastcom. That's MIDEASTCOM.org. Please call me or email me. Thank you, Abby. I cannot type well on this. It's just not successful tonight. So thank you so much for putting that up there. But if you're a family caregiver, please contact me and I'll do whatever I can to help you on your caregiving journey. The way I describe my job is to help caregivers take care of themselves so they can continue to care for their loved ones in the home as long as they can. That's the best we can hope. As long as the caregiver can, we want to help. Okay, now I'm going to turn it over to Abby and she is going to close out her meeting. Thank you.
Hey everybody. So I am going to try to make this happen with my terrible internet. I obviously want to, start by thanking our caregivers, Beth and Mark, because that's a lot of personal information to share with a lot of people that you don't know, and that's really difficult to do. And so we just really appreciate you taking the time tonight to do that, because you're caregivers and you work. So this is not an easy thing to fit in with everything else. I also want to thank Tamara and I want to thank Mary Hall and as well as Amanda Biggs for being here. They're all very special human beings who do really important work. And they're here out of the goodness of their hearts on top of everything else that they do. So we really appreciate their involvement in aging well together and what they do every day for caregivers. So I'm just gonna briefly tell you a little bit about what's coming up next in case you're interested. So our last virtual talk is gonna be April 15th, and that's gonna be Nance Mize and Alice Keene. I think Alice Keene is on the meeting tonight too. I thought I saw her name, and they will be our speakers. Their topic is going to be the path to successful aging. I think it's going to be a really fun, interesting, engaging talk and great way to kind of wrap up the Aging Well Together virtual talks and events for this year. In the chat, if you're interested in seeing previous recordings that we've had for our virtual talks and events, or if you have questions, Viva is going to type in our Aging Well Together website, as well as our healthyaging@ecu.edu email address. So if there are questions that you have, please reach out. Also, another friendly reminder, you could get a nice 15-minute quick break in between now and then. Tonight from 6 to 7 p.m. is going to be that music-based wellness workshop for caregivers. It is virtual. It is cost-free. So Adrian, I believe you are going to type the information and the link in there in case people want to join that. So it's really cool that we're able to kind of dovetail you into that activity if you're able. I think that is it on my end. And I just want to say thanks to everyone for being here. Reach out if you have questions, and I hope you have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Deb.
you, everybody.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. And
Thank
Beth.
you, everybody.